Where I was at school, education could go hang as long as a boy could hit a six, sing the school song very loud, and take a hot crumpet from behind without blubbing.
Welcome to episode 14 of the Blackadder podcast. Ian, when you were at school, were you more of a six hitter or a crumpet taker?
We weren't really into cricket in Scotland, but crumpets, they're English as well, aren't they? Do you have crumpets at your school?
Not that kind.
No.
No.
The bigger, flatter ones.
Let's just move on. I'm not sure if you understand what he means by taking a crumpet. So we begin the fourth and penultimate season.
Yeah, even though we've not done the first one, it feels kind of significant to be doing the fourth one.
Yeah. I think maybe earlier I hinted that my favourite season was season 3. However, after rewatching a few episodes for this run, I am quickly reminded of just how good it is, and I think that season 4 of Blackadder elevates the show from being great to tremendous, or good to... It's in a league of its own, really. It makes it special.
Yeah, it makes it iconic, I think.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I think most people, in fairness, when they think of Blackadder, they think of Blackadder in the trenches.
I think it's the most familiar image for him, certainly.
Mm-hmm. And no doubt that's something to do with how recent it is as well.
How recent the Blackadder is, or how recent the war was?
Both.
Both, a bit of both, yeah.
Yeah, because I think that what we have here is fantastic political satire, and we discussed this off mic last week, I think. During the Elizabethan times and the regal period, Blackadder may have been a fantastic lampooning of the time and the environment, but no one really knows that much about it, other than historians. But the Great War is still familiar enough, it's still studied in schools and what have you, that there's something more relatable, I think, to it.
No, I think that's absolutely true, yeah. We should maybe do the background to this series.
Do you have something for us?
I'll get a little bit of a spiel.
Oh, excellent.
Okay, so we're moving from the Regency, where we were in Blackadder III, and we're now in Flanders in 1917, on the Western Front of the Great War's principal theatre. At this time, both sides in the war have dug long trenches from the North Sea to the Swiss frontier with France, and in 1916 and early 1917, just before this series, there were several attempts to advance, leading to significant casualties, but no progress from either side. The most well-known of those is probably the Battle of the Somme, where around 1.2 million men died, in roughly equal numbers on each side, for no progress. And that battle probably would have ended just a few months before we joined Blackadder, Baldric and the others. It's quite a shocking thought, isn't it? 1.2 million men dead for nothing.
Scandalous. Absolutely scandalous. And I think...
That's just one battle. There's others with hundreds of thousands dead as well.
Even in the first episode here, the ludicrousness of it is highlighted by Blackadder, and I think that's what they do throughout this entire... It's not, some people might think it to be subversive or, I suppose, anti-British. Mm. And it is to an extent, but only the political arum.
Yeah, well, this is something that Tony Robinson actually talks about in his autobiography. I was having a look at the relevant part for this, and he talks about his initial reservations when they brought the idea of the First World War, and how those were assuaged. And it's not the soldiers that are the butt of these jokes, it's the decision makers, the politicians, the generals and whoever else. And I think that's quite apparent as we go forward.
For sure. Okay, are you ready to start this week's podcast?
I am.
Do you have a summary?
Very briefly.
Crack on.
In Captain Cook, we meet Captain Blackadder and his fellow Tommies, Lieutenant George and Private Baldric. Blackadder fears plans are afoot to send them over the top to die in a barrage of gunfire, and looks for a way out. When an opportunity arises to become the regiment's official artist and perhaps relocate away from the front lines. Blackadder takes advantage of his colleagues' talents. But will he experience a renaissance when the true picture becomes clear?
An illuminating picture painted there, Ian. Thank you. We should say that we have obviously a different intro to this season.
We do. While I was talking about Tony Robinson's book, I could tell you what he says about this. Apparently it was a great feeling of celebration when they all got back together to do this series after the success of the previous season. Filming this at an actual barracks. Apparently it's a hilarious moment when Stephen Fry fell off his horse. And there was not beat feeling. It was filmed, and you can see more than in previous seasons, there's been some treatment done to this film to give it that sort of archive feel. Yeah, it's quite cool.
Yeah. Of course, the theme is played out with a marching band.
Yes.
So we first see Blackadder in his trench. He is relaxing with a pipe and a book, but is irritated by Baldric, who has a cunning plan to try and avoid being shot.
Yes, he's carving Baldric onto a bullet because he's been told there's a bullet somewhere with his name on it, and he thinks if he owns it, he'll be safe.
Yeah, unfortunately, according to Blackadder, and he comes back with a classic insult. He responds to this dim-wittery by telling Baldric that if a hungry cannibal cracked open his head, there wouldn't be enough inside to cover a small water biscuit.
Probably fair.
I'd say so. And at this point, an enthusiastic Private George bounds in, full of vim and vigour.
Tally-ho, pip-pip, and Bernard's your uncle.
In English we say good morning.
Look what I got for you, sir.
What?
It's the latest issue of King and Country. Oh, damn inspiring stuff. The magazine that tells the Tommies the truth about the war.
Or alternatively, the greatest work of fiction since Vows of Fidelity were included in the French marriage service.
Come, sir. Now, you can't deny that this fine newspaper is good for the morale of the men.
Certainly not. I just think that more could be achieved by giving them some real toilet paper.
Not with you at all, sir. What could any patriotic chap have against this magnificent mag?
Apart from his bottom? Well, look at it. I mean, the stuff's about as convincing as Dr. Crippen's defence lawyer. The British Tommies are all portrayed as 6'6" with biceps the size of Bournemouth.
Thoroughly inspiring stuff. And now look, sir, this also just arrived for you this morning.
Do you know what this is, Lieutenant?
Oh, it's a good old service revolver.
Wrong. It's a brand new service revolver, which I've suspiciously been sent without asking for it. I smell something fishy. And I'm not talking about the contents of Baldric's apple crumble.
Quite enjoy George's full name. You don't hear it in the episode, but it's in the credits. He's Lieutenant the Honourable George Colthurst St. Barley.
A wonderful portrayal of this upper-class officer by Hugh Laurie.
Yeah, he's great.
And I think he exemplifies or highlights the difference between Baldric, who would be the working class soldier who has been either through propaganda or in his case, nothing else to do, been conscripted. And we've got at the opposite end, we've got George, who is perhaps from a military background, or he has went straight into officer ranks after a university education. I think that was the reality of the divide within the military.
Not based on ability, but on
social
background.
standing. Yeah. George then mentions the new trench climbing ladders that they didn't order. Although Baldric has put them to good use already.
It's the first solid fuel they've had since they burned the cats, I think he says.
I think so, yeah.
And we then, I think at this point here, the bit we got at the top of the show about George's school background.
Yes.
And Blackadder contrasts that with his own. He studied at the University of Life, the School of Hard Knocks, and the kindergarten of getting the shit kicked out of me.
Yeah, so Blackadder is able to take an educated guess at what is coming.
George is excited about the idea of getting sent over the top. But
Yeah, I mean, he is very naive. He thinks it's now the chance to give Harry Hunn a darn good British-style thrashing, 6 of the best trousers down.
Yeah, it's this sense of exceptionalism, I think, that's bred into some people, or certainly forced on some people of particular backgrounds, particularly these people that we talked about, who are knowing nothing but privilege.
But also, it's not just that. The British Army up until this point had been trouncing around the world
That's true.
invading countries,
Colonially,
where they were up against opponents with pieces of sharpened fruit, I think Blackadder mentioned in a later episode.
We'll get to that, yeah.
Yeah, so they've never experienced having a proper fight.
Yes, a balanced fight, yeah.
Yeah,
And also, I would imagine someone like George hasn't really faced much adversity in his life.
never.
There's a shot here at Field Marshal Haig, a real life person, obviously.
Well, certainly what happens is that in response to the thrashing that George thinks they are about to dish out, Blackadder confirms yes they are, if by that he means they're all going to get slaughtered, as Field Marshal Haig is making an effort to move his drinks cabinet 6 inches closer to Berlin.
That's it.
George still doesn't comprehend the peril, and so Blackadder demonstrates his point in a dramatic fashion.
Yeah, he throws his hat or helmet
yeah.
in the air and it comes down riddled with bullet holes.
Do you like his response, George's response to that?
Some kind of hat protector.
Some sort of clever hat camouflage.
I did enjoy this next moment when Baldric asks for permission to speak, because Blackadder grants it with a due sense of exhaustion and dread.
Yes. He has a cunning plan to avoid going over the top. What is it?
Yes, the staff headquarters wants good cooks, and if they could do that, then they'd be able to get out of the trenches.
Blackadder thinks this is a wonderful plan, and a beaming Baldric tells him his mother will be as pleased as Punch.
Yes, and Blackadder obviously has a bit of a caustic remark for the mother, suggesting she's maybe not even as good looking as Punch.
Baldric wants to write home. Why is that?
It's the first time there's ever been a good idea from a Baldric. They've been trying for centuries.
And they all turn out to be total pig swill.
They do. I wonder if our international audience would know who Punch is. Is it a British phenomenon?
No, I think Punch and Judy would be, is it not French? Or is it?
Is it? Maybe it's known around the world.
I think it is.
Oh, okay.
In any case, Blackadder has to point out one small flaw in this plan.
It's a minor flaw.
What is it?
Baldric can't cook. He's in fact the world's worst cook.
Yeah, and he then goes on to mention some of his culinary creations.
Yes, but we can maybe come back to those because they come up again later on.
Okay, so Blackadder insists that a better plan is needed, and Baldric offers a nice meal whilst he ponders this.
He's got rats, so you can have it sautéed or fricasseed.
Not surprisingly, Blackadder declines the offer, and George enters, now wearing barbed wire on his helmet. Barf, barf.
At this point, the phone rings.
Yes, but it is not Pope Gregory IX inviting him for drinks on his yacht named the Saucy Sue. Who is it?
It's presumably Darling, he doesn't say, but he's to come up to HQ and meet Melchett.
He does indeed, so that's where we go next. And Blackadder, for the first time, but not the last, has fun with Darling's name before he's told that Melchett wants to discuss a top secret mission with him.
Yes, and Melchett enters.
He does, but he's slightly confused.
Yeah, I think he's mixed up between Blackadder and Corporal Black, his barber.
So after being put right, Melchett sets out his plan.
Now, what I'm about to tell you is absolutely tip-top secret. Is that clear?
It is, sir.
Now, I've compiled a list of those with security clearance. Have you got it, darling?
Yes, sir.
Read it, please.
It's top security, sir. I think that's all the captain needs to know.
Johnsons, let's hear the list in full.
Very well, sir. List of personnel cleared for Mission Gainsborough, as dictated by General C.H. Melchett. You and me, darling, obviously. Field Marshal Haig, Field Marshal Haig's wife, all Field Marshal Haig's wife's friends, their family servants, their family servants' tennis partners, and some chap I bumped into in the mess the other day called Bernard.
So, it's maximum security. Is that clear?
Quite clear, sir. Only myself and the rest of the English-speaking world is to know.
Good man. Now, Field Marshal Haig has formulated a brilliant new tactical plan to ensure final victory in the field.
Would this brilliant plan involve us climbing out of our trenches and walking very slowly towards the enemy, sir?
How could you possibly know that, Blackadder? It's classified information.
It's the same plan that we used last time, and the 17 times before that.
Exactly. And that is what is so brilliant about it. It will catch the watchful Hun totally off guard. Doing precisely what we've done 18 times before is exactly the last thing they'll expect us to do this time.
There is, however, one small problem with this plan. What is it?
Well, I think it's the fact that everyone gets slaughtered in the first 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Haig's looking for a way to cheer up the men, maybe to motivate them a bit, and Blackadder has a thoughtful suggestion.
Yeah, he thinks that perhaps his resignation and suicide would help.
Another dig at Haig there.
Certainly.
Can't say it's undeserved.
But no, Haig wants a new painting for the cover of King and Country, and Blackadder is being tasked with finding the artist.
Did you like the exchange between Melchett and Blackadder when he introduces the magazine?
Remind me.
He says, "My favourite magazine, soft, strong and thoroughly absorbent," and Melchett responds, "I thought it would be up your alley."
Yeah. Blackadder's initial response is that all of his men have the artistic ability of a bunch of colourblind hedgehogs in a bag.
It's a bit of a blow because they needed a man to leave the trenches.
And at this, his stance changes.
Yeah, he makes this outlandish suggestion that the artist be sent to Paris to soak up some of the artistic spirit, I think, in the area. And he promises to deliver Vincent van Gogh, if we're going to be British.
Mm-hmm.
Vincent van Gogh before they can see sunflowers.
Back to the trenches, and an unsure-looking George is peering over Blackadder's shoulder as he attempts to paint before turning his now apparently cultured taste to Baldrick's effort.
Yeah, he thinks that Blackadder has painted 2 socks and a hand grenade. He doesn't think that constitutes cover material, and Blackadder says that Baldrick's is vomit, but George says, no, it's light, dashes of light, and Baldrick says, nope, vomit.
Why is it vomit?
He's been told by George to paint whatever comes from within.
A self-effacing George then reveals that art was his only true skill, and it's a hobby that he has maintained. And he then produces some exceptional works.
Blackadder's very impressed, and he asks why George didn't present these earlier.
And he says he doesn't like to blow his own trumpet. But Blackadder, what does he say?
He says you could at least have said you had a trumpet.
Blackadder then claims that these paintings could spell my way out of the trenches.
George is curious, he says, yours?
That's right, ours. It's a great line.
I like that.
All they have to do is paint something that appeals to the simple-minded Tommy.
So Baldrick's idea is that they have a noble Tommy standing looking horrified and disgusted over the body of a nun who's been brutally done over by a nasty German.
Yeah, so is the German in the painting?
No.
Okay, so the title, which I like, doesn't make sense then. I think they call it The Nun and the Hun.
Yeah, which for start depicts the Tommy as a Hun, and also the painting's going to look like the Tommy's murdered this nun.
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, George requires a couple of models.
Yes, and there's only 2 people who could do the job.
Yes.
Baldrick's not that keen on playing the nun because he doesn't want to get down on the ground where it's filthy.
So Blackadder offers him an alternative.
Yes, he can get down on the ground and be the nun, or he can get punched to the ground with a broken nose and be the nun. So Baldrick points out it's not that wet anyway, and gets down with a squelch.
As they wait for George to get ready, we find out a little bit more about Baldrick's father, who was apparently a nun.
He was. That was something Baldrick learned from all his father's court appearances, where they asked his employment and he said none.
A little nod back there, I think, to Sod Off.
Yes, well, Baldrick, and this is known as Private S. Baldrick, so that could well be a family name.
Indeed. George now appears back out, and he's decked in his artistic get-up.
Yes, he's looking very flamboyant with his flannel shirt and his hat and his easel.
And he proceeds to invite them to remove their clothes.
Well, I think it's just Blackadder, and he's not happy about this suggestion at all.
No, he initially tries to remind him of the realities of war.
Yes, that they fight fully clothed.
Yeah, but George says it's a willing suspension of disbelief.
Yes, and he doesn't want people looking disbelievingly at his willing suspension.
So they get on with it, but this time not with Blackadder tackle out.
No. He retains his clothing.
And we see the final painting sometime later. Blackadder describes it as a masterpiece.
Well, perhaps, but it does look like the British soldiers just killed this nun.
It does, yes. I wonder where this painting is now. I can't believe that they would have thrown it out.
No, I also wonder who painted it, but I reckon almost certainly it's going to be hanging on the wall of the Director General of the BBC.
If anyone knows, it would be good to find out.
If you've got it, then please send it over.
So Blackadder tells them that Melchett will be arriving shortly, and when he does, he will do all the talking. They can only open their mouths with his express permission.
And Melchett and Darling do arrive, but Melchett once again thinks he's here for a haircut.
He does, however, recognise George as a family friend before they engage in toffee's Oxbridge tomfoolery with their own particular rendition of Row Your Boat. Can you remember how it went?
No, I can't. Do you remember the lyrics they
Row,
use?
row, row your boat gently down the stream. Belts off, trousers down. Isn't life a dream?
Public schoolboy nonsense.
I think that's what Blackadder says. Melchett then addresses a very confused Baldric.
What have we here? Name?
Permission to speak?
Baldric, sir.
Go tally-ho, yibbity-dap and zing-zang spillit. Looking forward to bullying off for the final chucker?
Permission to speak? Answer the General, Baldric.
I can't answer him, sir. I don't know what he's talking about.
Are you looking forward to the big push?
No, sir, I'm absolutely terrified.
The healthy humour of the honest Tommy. Don't worry, my boy. If you should falter, remember that Captain Darling and I are behind you.
About 35 miles behind.
Right, well, stand by your beds. Let's have a look at this artist of yours, Blackadder. Next to me, darling.
Thank you, sir.
Have you found someone?
Yes, sir, I think I have. None other than young George here.
Oh, bravo. Well, let's have a shufty then.
It's simply called War.
Melchett, however, is not impressed with what Blackadder shows him, and George is desperate to let him know that it's not his work. But Blackadder is not keen on giving him the necessary permission.
No, he's not allowed to speak, and Blackadder turns to Baldric's painting.
Yes, and it is met with equal disapproval before Blackadder pulls out a little thing that he threw together himself.
Yes, George at this stage is almost apoplectic with the need to speak.
Yes, and he has to watch as Blackadder is congratulated on this masterpiece. However, Darling doesn't quite believe him, and Blackadder goes on an indignant rant about how this is a slight on his name.
Yes, but Darling has 3 key reasons for his belief.
What are they?
Number 1, he's in it.
It's a self-portrait.
Number 2, he already told them he couldn't paint.
Doesn't like to blow his own trumpet.
And finally, it's signed George.
Now, thinking quickly, Blackadder claims it was not signed to George, but dedicated to George. King George. Gentlemen, the King.
That reminds me of a Great Boo's Up.
Yes, indeed.
Great Boo is up.
So they all salute, and the 3 of them leave for HQ to discuss Blackadder's new appointment.
It's regimental artist.
So that's where we are, headquarters. And Darling is suspiciously pleased with Blackadder's new role, and we soon find out why.
Yeah, the cover story was a cover story.
Huh.
They want the artist to leave the trenches, as promised, but rather than go to Paris, he's to go out into no man's land and paint the enemy positions.
Yes. Blackadder realises, and it's great the way he verbalises his thoughts. So he just clarifies, they want him to sit in the middle of no man's land,
Yes.
top of a ladder, I think, painting pictures of the Germans, and he points out that his medium is light.
Yes, so they're going to put up flares right above him as he sits in no man's land. It's a bit later, and Blackadder clearly hasn't taken this commission alone.
No, he's joined by George and Baldric on their bellies as they scramble through no man's land, and they try to read a map.
Yeah, I think you can understand at this point why George would have forgiven Blackadder, because he'll clearly have been able to explain that he's taking the credit for all of them and they're all going to benefit.
Sure.
The map shows that their present field is filled with mushrooms, according to George.
Well, that's what George thinks. And Blackadder tells him that the mushrooms, the pictures of these mushrooms are in fact a key.
Yes.
He looks up the key, and what does the key read?
Well, it says mine, so he believes that they are mushrooms that belong to the person who made the map.
So Blackadder has to point out they are in fact in a field of landmines.
They are, and shots ring out.
Yes. So under fire they discuss and demonstrate who is the stupidest.
Well, Blackadder uses the phrase use your imagination, doesn't he? And that makes him realise how stupid he's been.
Mm-hmm.
But at that point, George and Baldric have a stand-up row about who is in fact the stupidest of them all.
It's a close run thing.
Well, yes, and additional shots ring out and they dive down to the ground and they agree on Blackadder's prompting to just go back inside and imagine what the defences might look like.
As they retreat, Blackadder informs George of the protocol and how to react if they should happen to stand on a landmine.
Yeah, George is curious about this, and he's told that I think it involves spreading yourself across as wide an area as possible.
I think it's jumping 200 feet
Yes.
into the air and spreading yourself is here. Back at HQ, Blackadder and George are both there to debrief Melchett.
Are you sure this is what you saw, Blackadder?
Absolutely. I mean, there may have been a few more armament factories and not quite as many elephants, but...
Well, you know what this means?
If it's true, sir, we'll have to cancel the push.
Exactly.
What a nuisance.
Exactly what the enemy would expect us to do, and therefore exactly what we shan't do.
Now...
If we attack where the line is strongest, then Fritz will think that our reconnaissance is a total shambles. This will lull him into a sense of full security. And then next week, we can attack where the line is actually badly defended and win the greatest victory since the Winchester flower arranging team beat Harrow by 12 sore bottoms to 1.
Tell me, have you ever visited the planet Earth, sir?
So, best fighting trousers on, Blackadder.
Permission to shout bravo at an annoyingly loud volume, sir.
Permission granted.
Bravo!
That's the spirit. Just your kind of caper, eh, Blackadder?
Oh, yes.
Good luck against those elephants.
Darling's great here.
Yes.
I think it's obviously it's Tim McInerney who returned on the proviso he wasn't made to play a version of Percy.
Yeah, I think he suits this type of role better where he is a snivelling little rat, but he's got a bit of power to back him up. Mm-hmm. He's not just the fool.
I agree. Back in the trenches, Edmund asks for some stone, I think, or some marble.
Yeah, he is going to make his own headstone.
He is, and it's a fantastic inscription which I hope some people have used.
What's that?
Here lies Edmund Blackadder, and he's bloody annoyed.
Someone should do that.
Yeah, not with his name, obviously, but with their own name.
Baldric offers Blackadder some rattle van to help him think.
It's exactly as you might imagine.
What's that?
It's a rat that's been run over by a van. But it inspires a thought for Blackadder.
Yes, and he asks for the phone. Over in HQ, in the penultimate scene, we see Melchett and Darling eating dinner as the General unconvincingly laments at not being with the guys in the trenches as they go over the top.
As they eat, they realise that their meal is awful. It, in fact, meets all of the parameters that Blackadder described earlier that we skipped over.
Can you remember what they were?
Well, there's a plum duff with things that aren't raisins.
Nope.
There is filet mignon that's a bit turdish, and they're waiting for the custard to make it all better, which I believe is going to be cat vomit. The usual chef produces much better food than this, so Melchett questions Darling on what's changed.
And Darling offers an explanation. Apparently he was unexpectedly called away by the Pope to play cricket for England.
Yes, he's had to set sail immediately for the West Indies. Mm-hmm. And, as chance would have it, moments later, Darling was called by a trio of wandering Italian chefs who were in the area and had services to offer.
So he took them on immediately.
He did.
Just then, Melchett spits out his raisins.
Yeah.
And Darling assures him that everything will be fine when the cream custard arrives. And we're back to the trench, and the three disguised chefs arrive back, and even though he had fun, George seems disappointed that they missed the big push.
They did. And
a question I've got here is, are they the only ones left in this trench? If they missed the push, I don't know.
Someone might notice.
Yeah, they can't just stay there in the trenches.
Surely when Melchett comes back around and says, hang on, how are you not dead? Although maybe some folk survive the push and come back and they'll just say, oh.
I don't really understand. So they've got this big push.
Yeah.
And you move forward and then dig more trenches.
Well, that's the idea, if you can, but most of them just get shot before they get anywhere near.
Yeah, I understand that, but what happens is, these trenches are, people live in them. It's not something that you can dig in 10 minutes.
No, but you can dig an initial trench. As long as you're deep enough not to get killed, you can then pad it out a wee bit, I think, or build a tunnel through to your previous trench.
Is that how it works?
I don't know.
You're making it up?
Yeah, I'm just imagining how it might work.
Okay.
The elephants would help.
Yeah.
Blackadder, however, is more intrigued by how Baldric got quite so much custard out of such a small cat. It's a tiny little cat. It looks like my kitten.
Yeah. You didn't get the custard from that cat. I think it's perhaps homemade. Yeah. And that's where we end. Fantastic opening episode to season 4. I think if you're watching this live and you've been a fan of previous seasons and you think to yourself, oh, is this one going to live up to...
Yeah, it's really good. They very quickly establish some brilliant characters in such a short space of time. It's nicely done.
It is, and I think that, as we mentioned earlier, Tim McInnery has found a role that really suits, but Melchett steals the show. I think he was born to play this type of role.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, do we mention this on mic the last time? He's only a young guy.
Yeah,
But he pulls off this. I think he's only in his 20s still here.
Yeah, when he played the Duke of Wellington, we talked about this a little bit. This is obviously a development of that type of characterisation.
Yeah, but I mean, you can buy into this, that he would be a military general.
Absolutely.
He looks the part.
Yeah,
he sounds the part. Any trivia for us this week, Ian?
Well, I think I've kind of pushed out already. I know that there's trivia for the series, which we could pop in at any point. There seems to have been increased tension between the writers and the actors in the season.
Okay, let's
save it a little bit.
Yeah, let's save it, yeah. The 28th of September 1989 was the original air date, and we have a new director, although I think we'll leave chatting about him until...
Christmas Carol. Yeah, we're a bit out of chronology this week because we're saving that for Christmas time for you guys, but...
Yeah, so we'll chat about him then. Although I should say that he is known as Director 232418 Bowden.
Yeah, that's his army number, yeah.
Uh-huh. This is the only episode in all 4 seasons where there is no guest star.
Yeah, someone like Stephen Fry, who'd been a guest star in the previous seasons, obviously now going to be a regular.
Well, why don't we chat about him just now then? I've spoken about everyone else apart from Rowan Atkinson already.
We'll save him.
I don't think anyone really needs to be told too much about General Melchett, who's played by Stephen Fry, but he was born in 1957, an actor, a playwright, a writer, novelist, comedian, a voice actor, a presenter, a podcaster, a technologist, a tweeter, and a darts fan.
He also does some work on musicals. I think he makes a fair bit of money from the musicals that he's worked on books for.
He was imprisoned as a young man for stealing and using a credit card, a bit of fraud there. He went to, I think he was in a young offenders or a prison for a number of months.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I've read his autobiography. I don't even remember that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
There you go.
Like 2 or 3 autobiographies. You might not have mentioned it in the one that you read.
There are quite a few, yeah.
He turned his life around, however, met his future comedy partner Hugh Laurie while studying at Cambridge and performing in the Footlights. He is known for having appeared in University Challenge whilst a student. I think this might be his definitive role. What do you think?
Well, for that generation, maybe even for people at our age, yeah, I think for younger folk, maybe QI is more popular. It's not an acting role, but that may be what they know him for.
Jeeves and Wooster.
Fry and Laurie.
Wild.
Yeah, there's a few things, isn't there?
Yeah.
It's hard to pin him down to one.
He's also known for his battles with mental health issues, his sexuality and his sex life. As an actor, as mentioned there, he has starred in Jeeves and Wooster, a bit of Fry and Laurie, Wild, Danger Mouse, 24, Live Another Day, Kingdom, Absolute Power, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Doctor Who, Death Comes to Time, not sure what that is. He was the narrator in all the UK versions of the Harry Potter audiobooks. He was in Gosford Park, Peter's Friends, Al Fresco, and I think his first appearance on the big screen was as an extra in Chariots of Fire.
There you go. He was also quite prominent in the last 2 Hobbit movies.
Was he?
Trilogy, yeah. He was the Master of Lake Town.
As a writer, he has produced Stephen Fry in America, Fly's Planet World, amongst other things. He has written The Liar, Making History, Moab is My Washpot, and The Fry Chronicles. As a playwright, he wrote Latin, which won the Fringe First Prize in 1980, and he also adapted Me and My Girl for the stage. Apparently he bought the 3rd Macintosh that was sold in the UK, the first 2 having been purchased by his friend Douglas Adams.
Yes, he was very familiar with Douglas Adams, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm. And he was famously celibate for many years, but he married his partner Elliot Spencer in 2015. I think he's a comedian.
Is he? Don't know much about him.
No.
You talked about the Harry Potter audiobooks. He's also recently put out a lot of Sherlock Holmes on audiobook.
I have them.
You listened?
Yes. Very good.
Yeah.
Although, look, he's brilliant, but I'm not hugely keen on the way it's been formatted on Audible. It doesn't,
Too loud?
No, the structure of it. It doesn't split it up by chat. Oh, anyway, it's a bit messy.
Yeah.
Field Marshal Douglas Haig, what do you know about him?
I know that he let lots and lots of British soldiers die.
Yeah, he himself died in 1928, aged 66, and he was a senior British figure during the Great War, who was initially lauded as a hero, but I think in subsequent years, history has not been as kind, and his nickname, the Butcher of the Somme, indicates that.
Yeah, normally when you're called the Butcher, it's what you've done to the opposition.
Yes.
But maybe not in this case.
No.
Although he's obviously the General, or the Earl Haig, that the poppy collections are named for.
Yeah. Favourite line this week?
I think it was one of the ones that we heard in one of the clips earlier. It was, if you should falter, remember Captain Darling and I are behind you. When Blackadder responds, about 35 miles behind you.
Yeah. I think I'll go with, this painting could spell my way out of the trenches. Yours? That's right. Ours.
Yeah, that was good.
Next time, we have Corporal Punishment.
It's very clever episode titling in this season, because it's all ranks and then, but it's also, it's good. It's clever, I like it.
Very. Okay, that's all I think.
Okay, we'll see folk in a couple of weeks.
Cheerio.
Bye.